Willy Wonka was a strange duck, wasn't he? For one, he gave us a very misleading idea on how a chocolate factory actually works. There seems to be an extremely cavalier attitude to health and safety practices in his workplace, and he's immune to any sort of empathy for what the children that fall foul of his contraptions are experiencing. And that's before we get to his rather suspicious workforce of undocumented, physically disabled orange slaves. Despite this, his 1964 story remains a crucial part of any children's rite of passage. Such is the magic of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It is an absolute barnstormer of a tale by Roald Dahl. Dahl was a man who mercifully perished before he could be hit by a mass retrospective cancellation in the 2010s, and then probably a green card, an uncancelling, and a leading position in American politics in the 2020s. I sometimes envy long-dead authors for having the canniness of avoiding the seesaw madness of modern times. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory tells the story of a humble boy desperate to win the chance of a lifetime, a trip to the mysterious confectionery factory owned by that reclusive candy savant, Willy Wonka. Despite all the odds, a ticket finds its way into his mitt. He, his suddenly suspiciously very spry, previously bedridden grandfather, and a group of spoiled children and their doting parents, they set out on a journey of wonder and future diabetes through a facility unlike any other. It is a great story which led to an incredible early 70s musical starring Gene Wilder, a pretty mediocre Tim Burton effort in the 2000s, and a surprisingly credible prequel in 2023 featuring the ridiculously young, ridiculously handsome and ridiculously talented Timothée Chalamet, the absolute bastard. All of the previous iterations of the story have done pretty well at the box office, but I can tell you that this is based on none of those, although Burton's movie did have a video game across multiple formats that is as below par as the movie upon which it is based. This one is based on that weirdest of all possible licenses, a book. Words that I have to process through my brain in order to create a scene in my imagination. Disgusting. I hate it. It is the dark arts. The game, exclusively released on the zxspectrum 48K, was developed by Soft Option, who I can find very little information about, apart from they worked on this, and according to Moby Games, some of the home computer versions of Altered Beast about 5 years later. Citation needed, mate. The publishing house responsible was Hill McGibbon, which, rather than being an orientating Scottish great ape, was a software house who released titles across the 8-bit formats in and about 1984 to 1985. I don't need citation for that. That seems about right. The game came with a copy of the book so that Hill McGibbon could try and make money from parents who wanted to subtly get their children to read more. This apparently didn't work, as this was the last game that they released. Oh well, worth a shot, wasn't it? Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is 4 minigames and, on tape side 2, a Jet Set Willy style platforming adventure. The 4 minigames feature the other children on the factory visit with Charlie as they look to avoid the eye for an eye Old Testament cruelty lessons meted out by the Chocolagarch as he runs the gamut of post-visit litigation from the aggrieved parents. Charlie himself applies his jumping shoes for Side 2's Treat Plant Excursion. The first minigame also has you as young Chuck as he looks to steer morbidly obese Augustus Gloop through pipes collecting W's. More on those in a bit. You'll remember that in the story Augustus was the roly-poly fella who got all choco nuts at the riverbank and promptly fell in before getting stuck through the plumbing. Not only dangerous for Augustus, but a serious red flag on your hygiene standards, Wonka. Fat kids sweat more, and that's going to make a lot of chocolate taste unpleasant, like it's from America. You steer Charlie left and right, but with no requirement to press a button to turn the pipes around. They just sort of do. In the course of the story, the Gloop parents wanted to get Augustus out of the pipes. Here, you have to keep the fat chump in them, collecting W's. Indeed, freeing the porcine chap of this Teavee constraint is actually a fail state. Rather in keeping with the German child's torment, this stage is a nightmare to play. The great lump zips through the confusing pipage at a hefty rate of knots, meaning that decisions are split second, and your decisions will most likely be wrong. In a game of this nature, you need your target to make sense in how it moves. The most logical way for something to move is straightforward. Our tubby European friend will instead pitch left or right at random, making that split-second decision absolutely impossible. I believe it probably is quite straightforward once you've memorised which L you have to get and when to get it, and which of the pipes are likely to have a fat kid in them at a particular time, but I found it too frustrating to persevere with. Next up, we've got level 2 and the driven arrogance of competitive American gum chewer, Violet Bogard. She snatches the 3-course meal flavoured gum in the story and finds out that the blueberry pie part of the gum is defective, causing the girl to inflate and turn blue, like a blueberry. In the minigame, Violet is equipped with a free-roaming Arkanoid bat, and she must hit the blueberries into the blue segment at the edge of the screen. Artistic license firmly in usage here. If the blueberry makes contact with anything other than the bat, then you will lose a life. Clearing the room of the blueberries will give Charlie another W. For incredibly loathsome kids, they're actually being a bit helpful, aren't they? Part of the issue for me is my insistence on using the keyboard, where the undefinable keys for all modes are 6 for left, 7 for right, 8 for up, 9 for down, and 0 for action. I was basically playing Twister with my fingers and my motor functions here, and maybe I should have sorted out a cursor joystick on the emulator settings, but I was being authentic. Alright, lazy. Also, doesn't Violet look like the sort of old woman who'd be known as a character in your local town, and is largely known as this because of their insistence of avoiding soap? Anyway, this bit is a bit annoying, mainly down to the controls, but it's not the worst. It's a simplistic early Spectrum arcade style game, and it's fine. It's fine. Overindulged rich daddy's girl, Veruca Salt, is up next, and her squabble with the squirrels. Well, in the original story in Tim Burton movie anyway. In Gene Wilder's version, presumably because of the difficulty in training squirrels to do what they do in the story, she has an encounter with an egg-laying goose instead. Both versions end up with Veruca being dumped in a bin, and should you fail this test, you will get squirrel marched to the dumping chute. Yes, you will. In this mode, you're in a maze that looks like the garden of your average flat-roof pub in the summer, all closely placed picnic tables. You must place poison nuts down for the squirrels to eat so that they die. In a story about teaching children about the errors of being self-centered monsters, perhaps committing genocide on the local wildlife isn't in keeping with the message of the story. Just a thought. Anyway, as the number of squirrels diminish, they start getting panicked like the last teenage girl in an 80s slasher movie, and rightly so. They dart about hither and thither at great speeds. Killing the entire pub garden of squirrels will result in Charlie taking another step towards chocolate capitalist godhood. There's a sentence you don't hear every day. Next up is Square-Eyed Mike Teavee, a telly addict and not in the Noel Edmonds quiz sense. No, Mike is instead laying on a urine-drenched mattress underneath a council estate stairwell, injecting old episodes of Busman's Holiday into what's left of his withered, ruined arm veins. His game is the absolute nadir of the quintet, a horridly unfair contest pitting Michael against the relentless march of TV camera Daleks, determined to shrink him via transmission signals into a 14-inch telly-sized little fella. There's a whole lot of W's to collect here and barely 1/100th of a second to react. Mike must start up the green elevators and come down to the lower levels on the red ones without being caught in the glare of the cameras. It is next to impossible due to the pace and the size of the sprites of your opponents. This level could have been greatly improved by removing the lift aspect altogether and just give Mike the ability to move up and down at will. In its current form, it does not work at all. And combined with the 6 to 9 keyboard controls, this level can pull up next to Veruca and get comfortable in that damn bloody bin. Side 2, and we've got, as previously mentioned, a Charlie guiding quest to fulfill his destiny of taking the airship of the mighty, the famous, the imperious Wonka factory. You can play through this, by far the most in-depth part of the game, via a practice mode, but you won't be able to locate the golden keys in order to progress to the game's conclusion. If you choose the main game, not on practice, well, once you've got past the third screen, the game will ask you for a password. Now, the password you would have got if you finished the other 4 modes first. I didn't, but I'd seen enough of the adventure part of the game to see that I would not have enjoyed it beyond that third screen. The patterns of the villain suites are a bit too erratic to be a commendable Manic Miner clone, and it's just not fun and too difficult. Plus, it lacks the character of Matthew Smith's efforts, or even those of a Monty Mole or a Technician Ted, which, given the majesty of this most famous of literary locales, is pretty unforgivable, isn't it? Not for me, this. Playing this made me feel like Willy Wonka was making me play it as some sort of psychological punishment for a past indiscretion. I can almost hear the faint song of the Oompa Loompas as I smack into yet another camera, or feel the burn of my contorted fingers as the lactic acid fills up in them, because I'm trying to dart about avoiding blueberries and squirrels. Oompa Loompa Dumpity Doo, I've got another riddle for you. What do you get if you bash your old root? You'll have to play a game that doesn't compute. You get the idea. I'm not going to sing anymore. You've suffered enough. And so have I. What did the press make of it? Crash reviewed it in August 1985. They gave it a 63% and declared it a bit of a disappointment. Sinclair User covered the title in July of the same year. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory fails after a very short period of time. However, as the pack comprises 5 games and a book, it must represent reasonable value for money. A 3 out of 5 from them. Next up, I'm sure we have a bit of Star Wars. Super Bombad Racing. How bad can it be? Misa very worried. That's a Jar Jar impression. I haven't heard them for a bit, have you? Like, subscribe, and K, thanks, bye.